public violating generally accepted principles and decorum of official public meetings.
Is there any interest in public comment?
Seeing none, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there any public comment on anything on the consent agenda? Move to approve. Second. A motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. So now we need to do a public hearing to present on the status of agency vacancies and recruitment and retention efforts. What will you tell us about?
Good morning, Chair and Directors. I'm Nicole Demay. I'm the interim HR manager for the agency. Last year, you received the first annual report required by AB 2561, which directs the agency to publicly report out on its current vacancies and describe its recruitment and retention efforts in light of ongoing hiring challenges. This year, the report is a little different as we are in a hiring freeze due to the 2026 Colgate Penstock incident. This hiring freeze will apply to the current vacancies unless the positions are mission critical to the agency's day-to-day operations. Despite this, we are not suggesting any edits or changes to our current recruitment or retention policies or procedures. Currently, we have 113 employees and 5 vacancies for a total of 118 positions. The vacancies are for the following job classes. We have Comtech Supervising, Director of Finance, Electrical Technician Trainee, Human Resources Manager, and Senior/Construction Inspector. 2 of these positions are union positions. Currently, we do not have a plan to open recruitments for any of these positions. 1 of the 5 positions is temporarily frozen. 1 position will be filled on an internal promotional basis, and the final 3 are being filled internally on an interim basis. As noted in the staff report, the union was contacted and asked if they wished to either talk or present any information to the board or to the public, and they did not wish to present at this time. With that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm open for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Nicole. So before the board discusses this, you need to have a public hearing. Public hearing is to receive comments on the presentation concerning agency vacancies and recruitment and retention efforts. I'm now opening the public hearing. Does anyone wish to present a comment? I see none, so I'll close the public hearing. And is there any comment from the board? See any? So I think that's just for our information. There's no action that's. Item 6, consider adoption of resolution number 2026-21, ending the Hallwood Irrigation Company Tiger Ditch and Pipeline Conversion Project grant agreement to reallocate $130,820 in unused grant funds to the flow control automation upgrade project, increasing the total grant amount to $691,410. Wow.
Good morning, Chair, Bishop, and board members. My name is Fallon Cox, and I am the grant program manager. Hallwood Irrigation Company recently finished 3 projects, and these projects support our water supply mission area. They provided a detailed presentation on May 5th of this month, or of May, in order to pay final invoices for the flow control automation project, Hallwood is requesting a reallocation of the $130,820 in unused funds from the completed Tiger Ditch Pipeline Conversion Project. We have multiple members of Hallwood Irrigation District here and Brian Mueller from Vermontis if you have any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on that item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. Item 7, consider adoption of resolution number 2026-22, amending the Camptonville Community Services District Campbell Gulch Diversion Reconstruction Project Grant agreement to reallocate $81,041.35 in unused grant funds to the chlorine contact tank project, increasing the total chlorine contact tank project grant amount to $451,154.35. Val?
All righty, so Cantonville is in the process of closing this project out. This also supports our mission area flood, water supply. In order to pay final invoices, they're requesting a reallocation of $81,041.35 in unused funds from the Campbell Gulch diverted construction project. We have Richard Descartes and Katie Burdick here if you have any questions about this one.
Questions? Any public comment? See none, so I'll entertain a motion. Those who approve.
A second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 8, receive and file an update of the agency's 2023 to 2027 strategic plan and approve the 2026 incident addendum to guide prioritization of agency resources, staff efforts, and operational focus for the recovery activities associated with the Penstock incident. Marysville.
Yes, so with the 2026 Penstock incident, we took a step back and looked at our current strategic plan. What we realized is the plan already provides a strong framework for responding to unforeseen events and prioritizing resources when they become constrained. So the addendum in your packet, it doesn't change our mission or our long-term strategic priorities. Instead, it really outlines how we intend to reduce staff time, financial resources, and overall efforts during the recovery period, while we continue to move forward on our core responsibilities. So Ryan's going to go through priorities 1 through 4, I'll do 5 and 6, and then we'll conclude from there and take any questions.
Great. Well, thanks, Teresa. Good morning, Chairman Bishop, members of the board. Ryan McNally, your Director of Water Resources and Flood Risk. So I'll start with strategic priority number 1, which is flood risk reduction. As you know, the agency has 2 foundational mission areas, flood risk reduction and water supply. Those obviously remain unchanged. The changes that we will see, though, are likely reduced financial assistance to our partners. It's kind of obvious, you know, as we're focused on the recovery effort, we're not in the same position to help. So obviously, same level of priority, flood risk reduction, but it's really just putting a pause on some of our projects that, you know, for outreach with our partners, like the reclamation districts, et cetera. Kind of the same thing for strategic priority number 2, water supply. Again, another foundational area of the mission or of the agency. Less grant assistance, you know, obviously financial restrictions are going to hamper us there. With water supply mission, though, we also, I'll remind the board, we're the groundwater sustainability agency for the agency. So the groundwater basin is ours to maintain, and we have open responsibility for that. So we won't see a reduction in services there because obviously it's very important to people in Yuba County. Strategic priority number 3. No matter what happens at the agency, safety and regulatory compliance are going to be priorities. The only real change here is that we're locking in on the recovery and development of new initiatives, or things forward-looking like business processes, things like that, that really aren't core or not really necessary at this time. So, you know, obviously recovery at the powerhouse, making sure everything's compliant, safe, just standard. And then strategic priority number 4, something we've been working on a long time, we're going to continue working toward, is the obtaining FERC license. None of this would be possible without a FERC license moving into the future. So obviously priority, we're still, you know, full speed ahead on obtaining the FERC license.
Thanks, Ryan. So priority 5 are organizational capabilities. It's really about making sure we have the people, the systems, and the capabilities in place to support recovery and maintain reliable operations. Our primary focus remains on safety, regulatory compliance, physical security, cybersecurity, and retaining the workforce that we have. At the same time, we're taking a more careful look at discretionary spending, things like new positions, non-essential training opportunities, conference attendance, and association memberships. We'll continue to evaluate those to make sure that they align with our recovery efforts. Priority 6 is our economic development and community well-being. As you know, priority 6 recognizes the important role we play in supporting the broader community and local economy. While we continue providing coordination and technical support where we can, the incident has required us to pause much of our outgoing financial assistance. As a result, programs such as sponsorships and community impact grants and loans are currently on hold, and they're being individually evaluated as we focus resources on recovery. Those are our 6 priorities. In conclusion, again, the addendum doesn't change any of our long-term priorities. It just kind of it provides a practical roadmap for how we navigate the recovery period. If there's any future changes that we might need, we'll come back to this board for additional addendums as necessary. With that, we'll take any questions.
I'll say it right off the bat. I'm impressed that you got together and reevaluated that plan. That's something I may have thought about as quickly as you did to take a step back from the emergency situation and say, okay, how should we be spending our time and our resources at this time? How does it change? And so when I saw this on the agenda, I thought, I'm impressed that the agency thought to, all of you thought to step back and do that. So, any comments from the board?
I would make the comment that you said for the Berkeley license. I hope that it's a strong for because Berkeley license is very key to us. The way Washington keeps turning things around that won't take her out.
I think by 4, you mean that's just kind of part 4 of the plan. It's not like the 4th priority, right?
Yeah. I'm making sure of that.
Yeah.
And through the chair, I'd just like to say thank you for recognizing all the different facets of the community, right? So the water industry is huge, making sure the partners know that we're making them a priority. Make that primary, make it the priority. Then mentioning all the regulatory so that people understand what's happening front and that cut corners in our recovery. We're gonna make it. I mean, that it's all our plates from the bottom all the way up to the management, the same message. Appreciate that. And then also the community and economic development, mentioning that on both. It's still a priority. Technical. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
For the board comment?
I'll make a comment. So many of the actions that are reflected in this addendum or amendment, we've already taken. We've taken them through discussions with the board, and they were taken in near real time, and we've had the discussions with you and presented them to you, kind of like our amended budget a couple board meetings ago. What this does is this formalizes the direction that we're getting from the board. We had to respond quickly after the incident. We took those actions consistent with this, but this basically tells you what you have summarized to us, how to execute agency actions going forward. It formalizes that. So it took a couple months for us to, kind of dust ourselves off and figure out where we are, and this formalizes it. What I'm really happy about is the strategic plan did have a section on unanticipated circumstances, and it basically outlined exactly what to do if you experience something like we experienced with the Penstock failure. So it was frankly fairly easy to implement this revised addendum and get clear direction from you guys because you already approved a plan on how to respond. So this just formalizes all that.
Is there any public comment? See none. Ready for a motion? Thank you. Move to approve.
Well, second. You take it.
Commissioner Bo?
You're gonna have it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 9. Consider approval of the following. 1, the Yuba-Water Agency proposed budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2027. And 2, the updated personnel allocation chart with reduction in unfunded 10 vacant positions. This was recommended to go to the board as discussion item 5, the Administration, Budget, and Personnel Committee on May 19th. Great.
Thank you, Board Chair, members of the board. Here in front of you is our proposed budget for fiscal year 26-27. Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you. So number one, we want to start it because this is going to be, there's some major themes through this presentation. Some of them are going to be the large projects that we have, and you'll see that through the presentation. Another theme is going to be the use of reserves. And what we want to do is start with a snapshot of January 1st, 2026. Why this number? We get our numbers from the county. They're going through a new system, so this is a good number that we've gotten from the county. Last number on that, and it also provides us before some bills, which we haven't received yet for the recovery. But what it shows here is over time that you have been saving funds in those areas you identified and you put together, both for power systems and the general fund. So you see in front of you, you have the operating area that you put money in as a savings area for reserves. You have emergency, energy sales risk. So if anything went wrong with an energy sale, we have money set aside to pay for it. And non-routine and capital projects. And then the general fund, we have similar categories because we have similar areas with those two different operating areas. The one difference is you're going to see is bond payment. Those bond payments is for Trillia, and we go ahead and help with the county to make those payments. We save money aside for that. So what you can see is on that snapshot on January 1st is that we have about $471 million in reserves. You see those operating areas where you put money aside. And then the one area you're going to see that we have an unrestricted fund balance. The reason why it's unrestricted at that area is we haven't come back to allocate it in those areas that you guys have talked about. We'll do that at a different time once we figure out at the end of the year where we are with our reserves. And then we set aside also $15 million in a CAISO account, so billing back and forth CAISO in the open market. So that is a snapshot in January of 2026 where we were with reserves. Again, major topic as we move forward because of the current situation we're in. Any questions on that slide as we move forward?
I'll make a comment. Yeah. So today's presentation is a little different than past budgets. Where you have a structural deficit budget this coming year because of a lack of generation revenue. We'll have a slide on that. But what we wanted to do is give you an overview so you knew as we went through the details of our expenses for 26 to 27 that you have reserves set aside for an incident like we experienced. And we want to start it at the top and show you have $471 million plus or minus. This is a January number to work from. One of the last slides in the presentation will show you where we're proposing that we extract money from the reserves to pay for fiscal year 26 and 27. So we're starting with a snapshot of what you have. We'll go through the details of both the Power Systems Fund and the General Fund, and then we'll propose where to draw from near the end of the presentation.
So we can go to the next slide, please. So the reason why you're in a situation where you have funds set aside is because over the years you've made very prudent decisions. When the energy market has been robust, you can put money aside instead of spending it. So you can see it, especially in the last 2 calendar years. And why is it calendar years? There because we sell those products in a calendar year, not fiscal year. But over the last 2 years, as an example, we have robust electricity markets, and you put that money aside. That has allowed you to have money to spend in a situation like you're in right now, where you can pull from reserves and use that for different projects, and especially when, as another major area that we'll talk about today, is when you have a lack of electricity revenue coming in. Any questions about that? Yeah.
We have the 471. It's earning interest from the county. I didn't notice in here where your, is that still a prudent place to have it?
Yeah, so good question. And so it is right now. As of April, the payback or the interest rate that we're getting back from the county is a little bit more than the other banks. So right now, it's doing well.
Is it averaging the 2-year treasury yield?
Yeah, right now it currently is from the other 2 banks that we have. Yes. Good. So a large theme, and this really gets into what was talked about with the strategic plan, is within this budget, we look at recovery and other important outcomes within the budget. Recovery because of the Penstock incident, but in addition to that, we have other projects that are helping us get our license, right? To get through the state and work with the state, we've taken on a project at the Nature Like Fishway and Fish Stream. And so that will help us along the way to get our license. And then in addition to that, not only the recovery and then also the Nature Lake Fishway and Fish Screen, but we also still have outgoing grants that are awarded. So per our last presentation to the board, the amended budget is talking about those grants that have already been awarded, is going ahead and allowing for those grants to move forward at this moment. Any questions on that? Those larger projects we have right now? You're going to see that those are the largest drivers within this budget currently. So challenges do remain on top of all the different projects that we have. Number one is the lack of electricity revenue right now coming in from the Colgate units. Not only are the Colgate units big, large, but the Colgate units also flex a lot. And so they provide electricity in the high value times of the day. And we're missing that right now. We're gonna have a lot of pressure on reserves and the use of reserves because of that first bullet point up there, the lack of electricity revenue. We're really going to be leaning on those reserves to get us through this time right now. In addition to that is the uncertain costs with the Penstock recovery and other important projects. We have set a little bit of money aside for the Nature Lake Fishway, but at this point we don't know the extent of that cost yet. And in addition to that, what all the costs will be with the Penstock recovery. In addition to that is just navigating transmission issues. We've already seen that Narrows 2 was off for a period of time because of local transmission issues. And hopefully we don't run into that in the future, both Narrows 1 and Narrows 2. Any questions about any of those challenges?
I'll just add one point. Narrows 2 was offline because of the incident. PG&E's in a unique transmission setup, and they had to do some technical fixes to ensure the transmission system protection was adequate. It came back online last week.
Right, so here's the budget from a high level, both looking at very high level revenues of the two different funds, the general fund and the power systems fund. What you're going to notice right away, at least from the power systems revenue, is what we talked about before, electricity, right? The revenue is down precipitously, and that is due to electricity revenue being down at the Colgate units. In addition to that, if you go down to expenditures, you're going to see a decrease in expenditures. Specifically, look at the general fund and that decrease. We've looked at some strategic lowering of services just because of the situation that we're in. We lowered contractual services, legal services, and you'll see IT services there. In addition to that, the other drivers within this budget in the general fund is going to be within capital projects and also within the Penstock recovery. So in the general fund, you have the Nature Lake Fishway and Fish Screen. And then within the power systems, you'll have the Penstock recovery. And we'll dive deeper into those two areas here in a second.
On the general fund revenue, the 25-26 final was 45 million. The amended was 25 million. And then our entire budget for next year is still almost 25 million. Why is that not? I'm just curious, can you tell me a little more about that?
Yeah,
25 million is?
That's a good question. So what you're seeing right here, the decrease is going to be grants. So we had quite a bit of grants moving forward. The question you had earlier was a little bit of a grant, and also the general fund had other grants as well for that. So Nature Lake Fishway, other grants, spinning those grants down. The other thing is what Director Matthews has talked about. You're going to see that as we start spending down our reserves, we're going to get less interest as well. And so that's what you're going to see.
So we're expecting a $20 million grant from sometime between February and the end of June. And that's why we went from 45 million to 25 million?
No, that would be for the whole fiscal year. So no, so we went down because we spent down those grants within that revenue.
So the very first line, and maybe I'm still confused that we were expecting to get $46 million in grants.
That's what we budgeted. Yeah.
And then the incident happened, so we received $20 million less in grants.
No, so what we did, we spent down those grants in the other fiscal year. So we budgeted for those, and so we budgeted less for grants because we already spent down some grants from the before. In addition to that, we budgeted less for interest because we'll have less reserves.
So I think you're talking about the third column, which I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
the third column. I'm talking about the second. Why is the second column $20 million less if it's grants?
So between the first column and the second column right there is, in addition to that, we started reducing also our interest as well. And then the rest of that fiscal year, we already had spent down some of that. So we changed the amended budget on that, spend down less of the grants.
So we're not going to spend the money that the grants that were awarded because we don't have an activity to spend the money into.
Yeah, and also we already spent some, yeah.
So we're returning the grant money.
No, we've already spent the grant.
Then wouldn't it still be part of our,
No,
because we received it?
No.
Spent it?
Well, and we also, in expenses and revenues went down a bit. I can sit down with you.
Okay.
Next. All right, thanks. So, any other questions? Sorry. So, moving forward, so revenue assumptions within this. So, what we are, the assumptions on the revenue side is looking at no sizable water revenue or transfer for the upcoming fiscal year. And again, spending down a lot of the state grants, tunnel outage, and the things that we just talked about, nature like Fishway, Arch Spillway. There could be future other grants, hopefully bringing in to supplement that. But at this point, that's what we've done, and done pretty prudently. Staff has gone out to find grants and spent those down. And then in addition to that is spending of reserves, which will reduce that investment what we bring in. So here we go right here in the revenues to look at it a little bit more at a lower level there. And this same issues that you brought up right there, the other revenue within the general fund. And then I want you to look at it again as well, that you're going to see that large reduction in electricity over those years. And in addition to the non-operating revenue as well. There's grants spent down from the tunnel outage as well, and that's what you're going to see as the large and other operating revenue decrease over that time. Assumptions on the expense side is, at this point, we do not have cost allocated to the rebuild of the Penstock. That is still an unknown. You know, we talk about these other unknowns, and we set aside some money within the budget, and those could go up or down in some of those other projects. This one we don't at all currently within the budget. Again, we placeholders there for the nature like Fishway and Fish Screen, and then time frame on cash flow on the Penstock recovery and the total amount for that recovery and what we decide to do moving forward on.
Are you going to do a big by this fall, we'll have a number put in for the.
Yeah, as we talked about at the board meeting where we got the 25-26 amended budget done, I explained that we will be back to you, to this board, more frequently than normal. Normally we get our fiscal year budget approved in June. That's what we're doing here today. And then we come back to you in December for a modified budget for the rest of the fiscal year. But with all the unknowns, and we have two major unknowns right now. One is the overall cost of the Nature Like Fishway and Fish Screen, and the other one, the biggest one, is the overall cost of the Penstock rebuild. We'll be back to you as soon as possible. Currently, this week, we have our consulting engineers doing the condition assessment of the Penstock. There's something like 20 plus engineers out there scouring the hillside today, taking measurements, doing an assessment on what it'll take to put that Penstock back up on the hill. We should have that report done in our hand by the end of this month. That'll be a big factor in understanding what it's going to take to rebuild the Penstock. But most importantly, the forensics evaluation. We should have at least a draft forensics report in September. So I'm thinking that you combine the condition assessment with the forensics report and you get back to you in late September, early October with an additional amended budget. And then probably a few times after that, probably back in December, we'll be back to you in December, and then maybe subsequently after December before the end of the fiscal year, back with revisions to the budget as well. This is a very dynamic situation. We'll keep you updated on all of our financial conditions and the expectations of costs going forward, but it's a unique year and we'll be back as we learn more.
And Nature Like Fishway also, you'll have numbers in fall.
Actually, I think that will be sooner, probably in the next month or two.
And through the chair, I know when we have an open request for proposals out there for how much it's going to cost to repair things, you probably don't want to have what our thoughts on what the cost will be out there as a public item. But are we prepared to move quickly when we do have all the factors? When we do know what the scope is going to be from the forensics report, and we do have the RFPs, are we prepared internally to analyze that and say that's within the what our engineers think it should cost? Are we prepared for that?
Yeah, a couple things. One, yes, we're prepared and we will move quickly. The other thing is because we have such robust reserves, and we've reviewed this at several past board meetings, there's nothing holding us back from implementing recovery. We have the cash available to implement recovery immediately once we know what it's going to cost. So we will move quickly, and that's what we're driving for. And our cash position won't, require us to borrow or have any action be contingent on some type of future loan or power sale. So that's our plan. However, at some point, and it's probably early in calendar year 27, we will have to come back with a plan for kind of recouping some costs through a energy sale, long-term energy sale, or a loan, just to ensure that we have coverage in our reserves going forward.
But internally, we're prepared to process. It's, I'm just not talking about having the war chest of money ready for it, but we're ready to analyze what comes back from the contractors and say, yeah, that's the accurate construction cost. So there's no. I just want to make sure that somebody doesn't just because they're the fastest one to get back to us. We don't make a bad decision.
No, absolutely. So I guess your question is about the quality of the proposals we get and to ensure that they're accurate. Yeah, yes, that will happen quickly, and we're prepared to analyze those.
When you were talking about the difference between selling power and selling bonds, we need to have that looked at before we know what the number is.
Absolutely. So my plan would be, and this is hypothetical, I don't know when this will happen, could be sometime later this year, early in calendar year 27, we will come to you with alternatives for borrowing or selling bonds or selling a strip of power. What we won't do is we won't ask you to receive a presentation and make a decision at the same board meeting. What we'll do is we'll present our alternatives to you, all the research we've done on all of our different alternatives for gaining some additional funds, and let you sit on it for a couple of weeks, and then bring it back for a discussion and board approval of how to move forward.
Would it be prudent to work on the both of those options before September?
So my direction to Creighton is to get our amended budget approved, which we did a few board meetings ago, get this budget approved so we can hit July 1st running, and he'll immediately turn to alternatives for borrowing, selling a strip of power, or selling bonds. That's what he'll work on. Let's call it July 1st. And I'll just tell you, Director Matthews, we're working on it now.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, so on the expense side, you're going to see, again, some large drivers and what's happened there. So on the M&O side, when it comes to the general fund, you're going to see, again, strategic reductions in contracts, mostly as you see in there. Those things are related to that. So professional services, legal, IT, reductions in communication budget, land management, and then some vacant positions that we had as well. And those are non-representative positions. So, and the reduction on capital projects as well within the general fund. That's even when the nature like Fishway is in there. Yes, sir.
So again, on the personnel first line, the second column versus the third column.
So the amended
personnel.
Yep. Yeah.
Why is our personnel cost going up if we're freezing positions, leaving them vacant? Why is our personnel costs going up? I understand Penstock recovery is going to go up, obviously, but why would personnel in general fund go up?
That's a good question. So we have a couple things. So one of the things that there at the bottom is you're going to see is a 3% COLA there. In addition to that, we built in the full year budget for the class and comp that came to you guys all as well. So people that were being, what we did is looked at class and looked at them from the perspective of what they were with our benchmark communities and getting competitive
So you built in the full year in that into the budget.
But we don't want to be competitive right this second because we're not looking to fill slots, we're looking to not fill slots.
Yeah, so that happened before the incident, but yeah, no, for example, with the slots are not open right now, we froze them.
So when they originally had the final budget, we didn't have the class comp study. When it got approved, the amended got approved, we did have the class comp study, so they forecasted for the whole amount. And then what we realized was partial year of the class comp study, right?
Yeah.
And so next year is that 13, so it's in between what they had last year and this year. So
Yeah, and Director Fuhrer on top of that, there was some, before we had the incident and before that between that final budget, we had a couple of new positions that came on, so we annualized that on top of it. So, I mean, there was a couple of different things. And in addition to that, we have a compensation package where people get steps if they meet certain criteria. And so we annualize that as well. So we put all those things together, that's what that increase is. And if you take it from the furthest column, that is well, no, those are all.
And then on the second section between the first and second column operation, what was the increase in operation on sections, the 24 hours because of the emergency response? Is that what the operations cost there is?
So you're saying the power systems operations between the amended and the proposed budget?
The final and the amended would have been, 700,000, is that because of the 24-hour emergency time, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. But I can get you other specific.
No, I was just curious. So that's not what's in the Penstock recovery. That was in, I assume, operations, and that's why that went up. So what does Penstock recovery consist of?
So within the Penstock recovery area, you have all those different areas, the different situations within the hillside, recovering within that. You have overtime, things like that we put into that to spread those costs within.
So that's my question. If the overtime is what's being allocated to Penstock recovery, then why do the operations have gone up?
So it amended. So I'm trying to follow right now. So
The
amended.
15,656 went to 16,327.
Yeah.
And so if that isn't from the 24-hour response and overtime and stuff like that, and that's inside of Penstock recovery, why did those operations go up?
No, I'll just be clear. That is related to like 24/7 response and all that, the immediate response. The Penstock recovery, the 5.6, that's like our contracts with Nordic and the other.
The road, the hill, all
and
that stuff.
sediment recovery and all that. Those are contracts.
So operations is where the overtime
Yes.
response was. Okay, thanks.
And then within amended as well, you still have the capital project, still have town. So what had been budgeted for that, it went down. So, and so other things that are again just driving the budget.
I'm sorry. So just to be clear, so on the personnel from 11.4 to 14.4, we spent $3 million in the emergency response of overtime and whatnot.
Okay, so your previous question was asking about the operations line. Now you're asking about the personnel line.
Yeah.
And that's in the power systems.
Real quick.
Yeah, power systems.
The same factor that Director House explained, the class and comp study, applies to both the general fund and the power system fund. So your personnel from 11,439 to 14,428, it's that same factor. It's the annualized.
And comp study cost a $3 million increase?
The class and comp study, basically personnel costs overall, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the COLA, the class and comp, you had, again, new positions within it, they're annualized within that, and then the step increases, those 4 things. So they're not isolated just to the general fund, they're to both sides of the household. So again, the other drivers on this, what we talked about, let's go through it really quick. You have the nature like fishway, the fish screen. But again, the general fund and capital projects have reduced even with those in what they're currently budgeted at. And then you have the increase in the power systems. You have the fund for the Penstock recovery, and there's cost, and there's nothing associated with the Penstock rebuild. And again, the 3% COLA is also influencing costs on that. So next slide. So this is what Willie was discussing before. So we do have a structural deficit with that. When you take out the capital projects and you take out the special projects,
in here, what you're finding is that your salary and your M&O is still more than the revenue that we're bringing in this proposed budget. So, I mean, there is a structural deficit if you take out those one-time projects still out, so the operating in there. And again, a lot of that is driven by not having electricity right now from the coal as well. So, slide. But there's still a bunch of risks involved in the 26-27 budget. So we could be increasing construction costs. We are still out there when it comes to construction and construction costs. We still have a lot of one-time capital projects that need to be done out there. We are still vulnerable to transmission issues at the Narrows units as well. The Narrows units right now are the way that we bring in revenue, majority of our revenue at this point, unless we get a water transfer in the future. And then in addition to that, another risk moving forward, and this is a big one, kind of the topic that we were talking about before is, no further grants or funding assistance from the federal or state government to help us out with some of these regional projects. They're regional in nature, right? Not only from us for providing electricity, it can help the region and where we are right now, but also water and then flood control. All those things are regional in nature. They're just not for us right here. Any questions on that?
I just have a quick question. So what's the Narrows 1 and 2 revenue per year?
Per year?
Yeah.
I mean, right now,
Average year?
yeah, right now we're talking 13.
$13 million.
I mean, that's,
And will that go up if you get their transmission problem solved?
no, that would be if everything's fine with transmission. It just goes down from there, unfortunately.
The other part, we were gonna try to dig so you could get close to the pipes, but you have to, the broken pipes. You have to dig and put new, you have to get next to the pipe. You're doing that this summer before we have the pilot.
So we're doing the condition assessment, that's engineers looking at it, and then we will do hill slope erosion stabilization to protect the facilities for this coming winter. As part of that, we will very likely get some access roads constructed into the pipe itself, yes.
We have to get to the pipe itself, the broken joints out.
That's right. Yeah, I'll just say, being out there last week in looking at it in more detail up close, during the Board of Consultants meeting, what you see is you see the roads that access the pipe from the 1960s when it was constructed, and you can kind of tell where they were in the brush. And then you can see the erosion that occurred from the incident, and it basically washed the majority of those roads out. So they'll have to be rebuilt to some level as part of the hill slope erosion stabilization.
But we can be doing that before we have the final approval of what happened.
We currently have a consulting firm designing that hill slope erosion stabilization, and we plan to implement that this summer.
All right, so in front of you, this is what Willie had referenced before, is the use of reserves moving forward, what the plan is. This is a budget, but we're really in a fluid situation, right, at this moment, when it comes to capital costs and what we're gonna be doing moving forward. We'll be coming back to you multiple times in this upcoming budget year as some of those things solidify. But right now, here is what the plan is when it comes to the use of reserves. Flush on the far left, you're gonna see those reserve areas that you all identified in the past. In the next column to the right, target is gonna be those target areas that you were looking to get at. As part of, if we kept on bringing in funds and we were putting them in different areas, those are the target areas you're looking at for reserves to get to, right? So the next column, beginning balances, January 26th, is the number that you all saw at the beginning of this presentation. And then what you see in the next column over to the right, estimated use in proposed fiscal year 26-27. That is what we are proposing in this year and the areas that we're looking to pull them out of. So for example, power systems, we're looking to pull out about $52 million out of reserves. It is coming out of that area for capital projects, not routine. That could change throughout the year. If we get grants, we get other things that could 100% change. And then if you go down to the general fund in those different areas, what we had talked about before, the bond payment for the bond payment for the South County is down there at 5.5 million. You guys created an area to save, to make those payments in a situation like this. And then lastly, you see a non-routine for the general fund of about 60 million, because the general fund also will have capital projects as well. We have a use of unrestricted fund balance as well in that to bring us to 135 million. And then what is the estimated moving forward? If this works out like the proposed plan, starting the next fiscal year, 27-28, you will have $335 million at that point. If everything goes to plan, we will be coming back to you at least quarterly to update you on what's going on with capital projects, what we're bringing in from grants, being able to use them all. And so that will change this. So coming back to you often this year will be very important. This will all change as we move along. Let me see if I missed anything. Oh, the last thing, sorry. So any replenishment reserves will be based on the completion of the very important capital and special projects, all related to the strategic plan that we talked about before. And the Colgate units coming back online to a robust electricity market, right? When the Colgate units come on, and the reason why you were able to set this money aside is the market was robust at the time, right? We're hoping for that market as we move forward to be able to fill these buckets back at the amounts that you all.
So structural deficit 12 million. Nature Light Fishway is going to cost us 90 or 100.
Somewhere around there, yes.
And so it's 135. So the difference is another 30 million somewhere. Is that 30 million because of we're doing the hill stabilizations and the other stuff? And so those are the projects that they have 30 million.
Yeah, you'll see on a previous slide, there's something around 60 million in capital projects. That doesn't include the rebuild, right? We don't include the rebuild, but we do include costs we know we're up against right now, like the sediment removal, the hill slope stabilization, engineering design, for those projects.
Okay.
And then you have like relicensing costs in there as well, modeling, CEQA. You have a lot of the fisheries, things that are related to us getting our license, things like that are part of strategic projects that they're still doing.
And then how did you allocate 50 million to general and 50 million to power systems? Was that just arbitrary, or is there a reason it went allocated in that way? Just out of curiosity.
So we did that because of just the capital projects that were going in there. If you do it by dollar, no, we just pulled it out at that point because of the capital projects. We couldn't pull out enough to cover those capital projects, but just enough that they were coming from the right buckets. I mean, we could take them from other buckets, but the drivers for the budget at that point are those capital projects. So that's why we pulled it from.
I'll give you an example. Erosion control on the hillside is a power systems fund. Nature Like Fishway is a general fund.
Yeah.
So that's how they were allocated.
And the reason we're not doing 90 for the fishways is because we're not putting all 90 into it this year.
Correct.
And through the chair, just a question about general operating or general staffing personnel budget. That's not included in this slide, right? That doesn't. This is just the use of the reserves.
That's just use of reserves.
Okay.
So cover costs.
So we're gonna have another 60 million, or
Oh no. So that's to cover. So you'll see this in the next slide.
Okay.
But this is to cover the gap between what your expenses are there, what you're bringing in revenues. That's going to cover the gap between those two. All right, this gets back to the fluid situation of this budget and talking about how we would be coming back to you all. Not only from updating you on what's going on in reserves and what we have in reserves, but coming back to you as just Director Fuhrer was talking about when it comes to some of these capital projects. You have the Nature Like Fishway, the fish screen, coming back to you those numbers, solidify, and then staff will come back to you as we know the necessary pairs and the construction costs when it comes to the Penstock incident. So along with those construction projects, in addition to that, staff will be back to the board to provide different funding options as Willie had discussed when it comes to when we find out what the Penstock actually rebuild will be. So we'll be back to you as well on that.
Next slide. All right, so to sum up the budget, this budget is to maintain operational, our operations here at the agency, to advance the critical infrastructure projects that are related to strategic plan, to fulfill what is in that plan, but also to get our license and to be able to move forward, support ongoing recovery efforts, and to preserve long-term organizational stability during a period of significant transition for us. So what we're asking right here is to adopt proposed revenues in our budget of $41,414,171. Adopt proposed expenses of $176,841,25, and then authorize the use of reserves to cover that gap, as we just talked about, $135,426,850. Any questions?
Would work, be adding something into our license, make sure that we fix Penstock fixed before they would want to rent us license.
I don't know that FERC would add anything related to the Penstock incident into our new future license. However, FERC may require an amendment to our existing license for the rebuild construction.
It's quite a bit of prior proper planning for this poor performance. Thank your staff for being able to bring all this together. It's kind of a wish list. Thank you very much.
Chair, before we start spending money on the nature like Fishway and things like that, we'll have a better idea of what our recovery costs are going to be, right? So we can make those strategic decisions as a board to do, right? I mean, this authorizes us to plan for all these independent directors. Does it actually authorize action to on that project, or is that something that we can sit and watch?
The current proposal is you authorizing, based on what we're proposing today, a certain portion of the Nature Like Fishway cost. We have an estimate in the budget. We don't know the total cost of the Nature Like Fishway. Before we sign the formal construction agreement, we will come back to the board and let you make that policy decision.
If it is like Fishway, it's part of our license. Water Resources Control Board signed it.
The Nature Like Fishway is technically not part of our FERC license. It is a related regulatory approval for water quality certification. It's actually an agreement between us, CDFW, and NIMS that's related to the license, but it's not technically part of our FERC license.
But it's an integral part of what we need to get our license.
Yeah, it is a foundational piece of the anticipated future FERC license. That's correct.
Through the chair, Billy, do you have an estimate of time on the Nature Like Fishway?
It's estimated the Nature Like Fishway will take 2 years to construct.
Okay.
Any further board discussion?
I'm gonna beat on this drum that I'm confused about, so I apologize. And this is maybe a detail that's too deep in the weeds, and that's why you guys don't know offhand. But when I look at Power Systems Fund, and it goes from 11 floor to 14 floor, when it goes from final to amended, that's a 25% increase. That isn't the overtime, that isn't the 24-hour response, that's in operations. So that's the capping comp study you're telling me is the 25% increase. For the second section, the first line, between the first two columns. That is just the cash and comp study you're saying.
Not just, there are other factors. We would need to dig in further to give you all.
Okay, that's a 25% increase, that seems.
And the class of comp wasn't the 25% increase.
No. So that seems like a large thing. So if overtime and 24-hour response was in operations, then stock recovery was other things, then that's why I'm just curious why there's that $3 million rise.
And like you said at the beginning of your question, we'll have to dig into that and get it to you.
Yeah, all right, we definitely.
I will point out, it goes down from the amended budget to this year's budget, and that's the belt tightening effort.
Any public comment?
Just have one question for Willie, this Matthews product that make it like this way. Wasn't your, water cert qualification based on that also?
The water quality certification that was issued in December of 2025 for the Yuba River Development Project referenced the construction of the Nature Like Fishway, yes, as what I will call a quasi mitigation measure for our ongoing operations in the Yuba River watershed.
And you have to have that for your license, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
When you say you have to have that, we have to have the water quality cert to
Correct.
get it for the license. That's correct.
That was Mike Felice commenting there for the record.
Thank you. I knew my.
Well, I need to say these are much better meetings than the state is having. It's budget talks.
Any further public comment? I will just comment, Creighton, I see you going through all your notes there. I don't know if you had anything you forgot to say, but I appreciate all your hard work, you and others I know that worked on this. And I think it's number one, it's a very reasonable way to approach this. We could see some income we're not expecting. We definitely are going to see expenses. We just don't know how much they are. We have the luxury because of the way, since 2016, the way this project's been operated and the way the energy's been marketed, the work that's been done by the staff has given us that $470 million in reserves. And it's an incredible, I can't imagine another government agency with the emergency that we face having the luxury of those reserves that are allowing us to progress in an organized way and be prepared to do this. So congratulations to Willie and all the staff and on getting us into that position. I think this budget reflects a lot of it.
It's one thing, a lot of prudent decisions in the past, but bringing in reserves, right? A lot of prudent decisions. Number two, over a short period of time, staff has come together to make strategic cuts on the budget, right? And also sometimes to put money aside for some unknown things that came to the recovery as well. So staff has really come together and worked really hard to be able to do those things, both in the operating departments and then also finance staff. So a lot goes to finance staff, and they've done an incredible job in bringing all this together. So a lot of kudos to everyone here.
Yes.
Please make sure to thank them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
It's a big job. It's without your prior planning, you'd be lost.
I can't imagine, going into this challenge, with the budget that most government agencies have, without the reserves we have. I can't imagine what we would be doing right now, or would have been. So.
You scream like a nuisance.
Yeah. Okay, any further board comment or discussion? Not, we're ready for a motion to approve.
Well, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are ready for your report, Billy.
All right, so we'll talk about storage in New Bullards Bar first. Currently, we're about 10 feet less than full. The reservoir peaked a few weeks ago. As I've reported in the past, that's a little bit earlier than normal. Our flood control curve that's included in the water control manual allows us to increase storage in New Bullards Bar on a prorated basis from April 1st to June 1st. So yesterday was the first day technically we're allowed the reservoir to be filled. That's based on 1950s and 60s engineering and hydrology. But it's pretty accurate that our snow melt normally comes in, mid-May through early June. This year we saw it in, mid-April through mid-May. So I'm just bringing that up that although we had an average water year, a near average water year, the water was, came into the reservoir earlier because of the earlier snowpack. So we're slightly less than full, but we have adequate water supply, for our irrigators. And also, we're in an accord, a Yuba Accord Schedule 2 water year. So it's the second wettest of our hydrologic schedules in the Yuba Accord. So we remain in a Schedule 2. And there was a time I reported to you a few weeks ago that we were teetering on potentially being in a Schedule 1, that we might have to submit a temporary urgency change petition to the State Water Resources Control Board, because we couldn't have met a Schedule 1 minimum in-stream flow with just the low-level outlet. We would have had to use the spillway, but luckily we remain in a Schedule 2. What that brings me to is being in an Accord Schedule 2, plus the current conditions in the Delta and anticipated pumping capacity in the Delta, we very likely, this is the good news on the budget, we very likely will have a moderate Accord water transfer this summer, potentially bringing in about $5 million in Accord water sales. So that's good news. It's also good news that the Accord was extended in January. We got approval from the State Water Resources Control Board to extend the Yuba River Accord for 25 years. It's always good to operate something right after you get it approved. So it's great that it's an Accord water transfer year, so we can exercise that agreement and just show its utility, both for revenues for the water agency, but also for water supply throughout the state. That's one of the justifications we always make with the Yuba River Accord, is that it's valuable not only to Yuba County, but valuable to statewide water demands, and actually implementing it this year is excellent news. So that's your report on reservoir conditions and hydrology. And
when do you expect the dam to be at the Preston gate? So you would only have the level up. They injected it.
I'm just going off of memory here, Director Matthews, but I think sometime in September. So it'll be a little while, August, September.
Won't maybe pump it in June, July.
Oh, so your question is about the potential to require our irrigators to pump water.
I understood that was when the water got below the spill gates.
Okay, so let's be clear. The condition that causes our member units to have to pump water is not the fact that water is or is not on the spill gates. It's the fact that the low-level outlet can only pass 1,250 CFS. And once you get to about now, early June, water temperatures in the lower Yuba River warm up, and we don't want to add water from the top of New Bullards Bar Reservoir or spillway water into that 1,250 CFS and warm the conditions in the lower Yuba River. So to be very clear, we have the capacity and the volume to deliver all the water to our member units, but we would be warming the water in the lower Yuba River, causing harm to salmon and steelhead. So we're proposing that we only use the 1,250 CFS at the low-level outlet to ensure cold water into the lower Yuba River, and that if the demand of our member units exceeds the 1,250 CFS, that our member units pump water at that time.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's another, just to be clear, it's a temperature restriction, not a capacity to spill restriction.
Yeah, originally I thought it was a capacity restriction because it was a low level outlet. When we got below the spill gates, we're saying another condition.
Yeah. Okay, yep, I got more. So the staff up at the plant continue to focus on penstock recovery. We had the first of several Board of Consultants meetings last week. So as you know, but I will summarize here, we have three major efforts going on. Besides sediment removal, road reconstruction, plant cleanup, the three efforts are: one, the forensics evaluation. I've reported that in the past. That is ongoing and continues, and that is independent and semi-relates, but doesn't relate to the other two major efforts. The second effort is engineering and design. So we have GFT, an engineering group that I reported are currently out assessing, doing a condition assessment now. We'll get that condition assessment in late June, like I said, and that will be used for the basis of engineering and design going forward. And the third group, so forensics, engineering design, and the third group is the Board of Consultants. As you'll remember, FERC requires that we hire a board of consultants to oversee the repair of both the Penstock and the powerhouse. We got that board of consultants proposed a month or so ago. It was approved by FERC, and we had the first meeting of that board of consultants last Wednesday and Thursday. That meeting includes the board of consultants, Yuba Water Agency engineering staff and management staff, and the design team, the GFT design team. The first day of that meeting was a field tour. So we visited New Bullards Bar Dam, the upper section of Penstock at the dam, and the section of failed Penstock and the powerhouse itself. The second day was an in-office review of the purpose of the agency mission areas, background on how we operate the project for flood control and water supply and how we gain revenues. And then we went into our plan for the condition assessment and our design criteria and our plans moving forward, including scheduling the next 3 board of consultants meetings. I'll just let you know that those meetings went really well. They were well attended. We had the regional engineer from FERC here. He's based in San Francisco, but he was here for the 2 days. He had 3 of his engineers here, or 4 of his engineers here. We had the 4 board of consultants, and we had several of our staff participate in both days. I want to compliment our staff. Kian, you get the direct compliment, but relay this to everyone else. All of our presentations, whether it was on, Tim from a dam safety aspect, Casey from the tunnel condition assessment, Matt from hill slope erosion. I know Aaron Esselman talked about the powerhouse, and I'm going to miss someone, Kian, so I apologize for that. But our presentations on the in-office portion of that board of consultant meeting were wonderful. They were professional. FERC was listening. The board was listening. They had very good questions for us. But I think the agency was well represented, and I think the board of consultants and FERC got an even better or deeper understanding of the agency overall and what we're up against with this recovery. So again, I said that's the first of several board of consultants meetings. That board of consultants will be key to the actual specific design that gets approved by FERC going forward. So we kick things off well. Kian, thank you for that, and thank your staff. I think we're moving in the right direction with our relationship with FERC and that board. In addition, you'll see generation sales summary for the last couple months in here. It's a very unique summary because what you don't see when you trend our energy revenues on an hourly price basis from 2025 to 26, you see a significant drop in overall, revenue per megawatt hour. It's 2 things. One, the market in general has dropped. So the overall CAISO market has dropped. But also what you don't see in these tables is with the lack of the Colgate units generating, you don't see our ability to generate in the peak price hours. The only generation you see in March, for example, are the Narrows units and their base load units. So you're going to see a significant reduction here year over year, but it's got 2 drivers. One, an overall market trend decreasing, and also the lack of peaking from the Colgate units. Creighton kind of went over that in his summary and revenues in the budget we just got approved, but I want to highlight that for the last couple months. Our typical recreation planning and preparation is ongoing. Our typical maintenance of all aspects of the watershed is ongoing, but I'll just say the team is doing a really good job kind of balancing the recovery efforts and, for example, still digging dirt off the top of the powerhouse, and then taking time away to go, maintain the reservoir or get the floating comfort stations ready for the season, or, whatever work in the watershed needs to be done. Vegetation management at our house dam, for example. They're using the recovery and, the cleanup effort as kind of their base work, and then they're moving around the watershed and completing the annual work that's required as well. Another example of our flexible staff kind of filling roles that are unanticipated but advantageous for us is, I'll use the example of Douglas Bortz, our land agent for the agency. He is out helping Kian's team tour the 20+ engineers through the Penstock condition assessment. He's one of these guys that's volunteered to do whatever it takes to get us recovered. And he's a land professional and understands easements, right of ways, and land ownership. And he's out there helping walk guys around and make sure they're safe. So just one example of how employees are doing things that they don't normally do. And we're doing that across the agency. I bring that one up because it's happening today. You heard the good news earlier in Creighton's presentation that Narrows 2 is back online. I reported in the past that PG&E internally had kind of their own arguments and justifications as to why they would want to bring Narrows 2 back online. But they also had their protection engineers say it's got to be online in a way that protects the transmission grid. So they worked that out. They, I'm going to say, argued amongst themselves and found a solution to get Narrows 2 online. But our team stayed engaged with them and let them know that we want Narrows 2 online as well. So Carl and Cameron and Kian and others, kept pushing that process along, and Narrows 2 is back online. And I anticipate it will stay back online, but I will remind you, Creighton brought this up in his presentation, there is still a risk to something happening with the Narrows 2 units. The PG&E's transmission grid in the area of Colgate and Narrows is in a unique setup because of the loss of their 60 kV yard at Colgate. So I don't know if we all know how the transmission grid will respond in peak operations this summer when we get a heat event. So all is good right now, but something could change this summer. Like I said, it's right about an average water year. It has been a fairly mild spring. We are in El Nino conditions. Those will last very likely through the wet season in winter 26-27. Like I said, New Bullard's Bar Reservoir is nearly full. It's about 10 feet from full. In our communications update, KFBK, Yuba-Net, Chico's Action News Now, and Fish Bio covered our grant to CDFW for the Salmon Reintroduction Program. KCRA 3, Fox 40 News, The Appeal Democrat, and the Mountain Messenger covered our sediment removal work around Colgate that's likely to intermittently increase turbidity over the coming weeks. A trade publication called International Water Power and Dam Construction covered our earlier announcement of the contract award for design and engineering of the Penstock repair. That's the GFT contract I mentioned, and that's the condition assessment that's going on right now. We updated our restoration project webpage with some frequently asked questions and a timeline, which may come in handy if you're getting questions from the public. That would be questions from the public about the sediment removal work and any turbidity that is seen in Inglebright Reservoir and or the lower Ute River below Inglebright. And as a reminder, you can find that page by clicking on the banner on our main website or at engage.yubawater.org. And we have a previously approved sponsorship coming up this Friday, the Marysville High School Safe and Sober Grad Night, which was funded prior to the Penstock incident. And our next board meeting is on June 16th. And it will be held at Power Systems, and it will start at 10 a.m. And Director Matthews, I'll pick you up and get you out there.
What's happening after that?
There's a lunch that's provided after the board meeting on the 16th. At Power Systems.
Okay, before we move on to director's reports, Seth pointed out to me, Andrew, we might need your help with this. There were two parts to item 9. I'm not sure that our motion was clear on what we were doing there.
Was there supposed to be a presentation on the 10 vacancies?
Was that was the public hearing we did earlier, correct?
My second was to vote.
That was my understanding as well, that you passed both items with the motion.
Andy's first was
Did Andy make the motion?
Yeah.
Charlie, you?
One more question for,
Okay, let's finish this real quick and then.
Okay, so there wasn't any other presentation on those 10 vacant positions that was already covered?
It's covered by both. So it was approval of the budget and the personnel allocation, but I understand the intention.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, Charlie had a question for you.
I thought when the pumpers agreed to do the pumping after the water got below the spill gauge. Now you're telling me the water's above the spill gauge, but because of temperature, they have to do the pumping. Does that change our obligation to have them pay for it against us paying for it? Because now it's a FERC issue rather than a structural issue.
The discussions we've had with member units since the incident and as the hydrology of this year and storage conditions and known restrictions like 1250 CFS at the low level outlet, all the discussions with the member units have not been based on the ability to spill, that have been based on temperature requirements downstream of Engelbrett, basically. We have not had discussions about restrictions based on our ability to spill or not spill. It has been very clear to the member units that the purpose of that restriction is for temperature management in the lower Yuba River. I'll further go on to state that with all of our 8 member units, we have a water supply agreement between the agency and each member unit, and there is a provision in each of those agreements that allows for these types, I'll just call them these types of restrictions in unanticipated scenarios like this. So it's not necessarily a force majeure situation. There is a contract provision that allows us to notify our member units that we do have restrictions, the cause of the restrictions, and ask them to, make up the water by pumping.
Can I ask you a follow-up question on that?
Yeah.
If the temperature is critical at different times for the salmon, do we get permission to spill and warm it up during the summer irrigation season for a little bit, like the secondary flood up at the rise?
So the temperature, yeah, sorry, Sean.
So, because I'm no fish expert, but isn't there like a spring and a fall run of the salmon when they need water colder? So maybe in the middle, when they do the secondary flood up, we could spill, get permission to warm it up a little bit to re-flood, to do the secondary flood up of the rise just for a couple of weeks or something like that. We'd look into that.
If you ask the resource agencies, and I'll name them, California Department of Fish and Wildlife or National Marine Fisheries Service, their desires for water temperature in the lower Yuba River, they say from late May till winter rains, the colder the temperature, the better throughout that whole duration. So I don't think they would approve or desire warmer water in, a July, let's say, re-flood up period of Marysville.
And we figured out how much it would warm it up.
We have models on what the conditions would be if we use the spillway in combination with the low-level outlet and just using the low-level outlet itself, like we proposed this year. And there is a threshold for tolerability of the salmon and steelhead. And by using only the low-level outlet, we keep the temperatures within that threshold. By using the spillway in combination with the low-level outlet, you potentially, this is all modeling, but you potentially exceed that tolerability.
Thank you, Willie. We'll move on to director's reports. John, would you like to start?
I don't have any past.
Just one more thought. There's going to be a conversation in the future about bond or selling a power strip. We purchased some properties because we wanted to do enhancement of environment for the fish along the river line. But there was lots of other acreage with that we talked about possibly selling. We have some property in Marysville that I assume we're not going to be moving forward with. Has a house on it still, I assume, that we could be selling. So it seems like there's some other assets that might be looking to liquidate and starting now. So it's not a rush later. We're not selling under market, just putting those out there as available.
Yeah, those are possibilities. The nice thing is because of our reserves, we are not in a desperate situation. I would propose to the board that we get the condition assessment, we get the forensics evaluation, we understand total estimated cost and duration of the period of time Colgate will be out. Then we come back to the board with all of those options on the table. It will be sell bonds, sell a strip of energy, get a loan from a financial institution, maybe some other creative way to bring in some revenue. In addition to that, liquidating properties. And we would compare, hey, if we liquidate all these properties, this is how much money you get, this is how much money we need, is it worth it? That is a policy decision we'll bring to this board. But I'll also say that there are regulatory obligations that are upcoming, like the Healthy Rivers Landscapes Program, that will very likely be approved by this governor's administration before the end of this year or the end of his term, that will solidify or put in place our Healthy Rivers Landscapes proposal. So much of the property that we purchase for habitat type work, we will still utilize by meeting those commitments in the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes program over the next 8 years. So
Right, but if we about 50 acres and only 5 of it is against the river, then the other 45 is sellable.
absolutely, and that policy decision will bring back to you with an estimated sales price of the properties and anticipated revenue by that. Secondly, you mentioned the Marysville properties. Well, it's obvious that we're putting any construction of a Marysville facility on hold. I think those are still, this is my opinion at this point, you'll make the policy decision in the future, but once we get out from under this incident and we start rebuilding our reserves, I think it still would be advantageous to consolidate staff, Marysville staff, in a building. So, I would recommend we manage those properties and hold those properties. Again, we'll look at this in total when we bring you back, future funding opportunity.
I think it's worth pointing out too, that let's say we have this, let's say next March, a year after the incident, we get this presentation from you. It's going to be talking about cash flow a year or 2 or 3 years out from there. So the actual borrowing, liquidating, whatever we do, we've got lots of time. It's just we need a plan. Once we know more about our costs and how long we're going to be without income, we need a plan at that point, but we'll have time. Andy. Ready?
So last week I went to CSAC with serving as a Yuba County Supervisor, which is the California State Association of Counties. They have their annual spring conference, which is kind of timely right after the May revised budget from the governor comes out. Gives us time to express our concerns and meet with state legislatures and things like that before they go to make their budget revisions. But one of the committees I serve on is the Agriculture, Environmental, and Natural Resources Committee, and they had a pretty big session the whole morning on from DWR about SGMA and the rest of the state. I mean, our county, I keep bragging about it to us anyway. I try not to do it out loud outside of that because it's bad. But the fact is that our groundwater monitoring, our management from our people in our departments is great. The way that we work with our farmers is great. You hear the Central Valley folks talking about the fact that they can't get surface water, they can't pump water. If they have subsidence, the ground's actually collapsing below them. They're going into states of emergency. They can't get water quality certifications, and it just echoes the projects that we're doing up here where the juice is worth the squeeze. And but you guys are doing the right work. I always mention like, hey, we might have to think about what's going to cost more, our recovery efforts or Fishway, but like Mike pointed out that those may not seem like their water, they're not going to serve our county well, right? But they do in all those projects, and so we're one of the only people that got a favorable water quality certification. The people in the Central Valley are just struggling. And something that I was able to do is I was able to sit down with DWR and PG&E at that meeting. So you're welcome. No, I'm just kidding. Right after that, Narrows came back online, but we were talking about loss of revenues, and they were well aware that Narrows 1 and 2 were offline, or Narrows 2 was offline, and that we have really limited revenue sources. And I just want to echo, like, I think we should be making sure our case is out there that this isn't just a Yuba County Water Agency emergency. This is an actual emergency still, even though we're not risking people. The funds that we expend in our communities, the projects that we move forward, they're changing the whole landscape of how water works in Northern California. And I think the region should be bought into that, supporting any type of emergency funds we can get. So still reaching out to not just Gallagher, but like the guy at the head of the table for the budget committee, Larry. He knows about Yuba-Water now because we sat down and talked for a little while. And before that, he had no idea anything was up here. But I think all those people that are building this budget should know. They can jump on it.
I'll respond to that.
Yep.
We do have an effort to get $20 million of emergency funds through the state general fund, and Adam has been rallying all of our partners in the industry, including buyers of Accord Water and folks in the energy industry. We're making good progress there. Many of our legislators are well aware of our situation, and I'm a little surprised to hear that John Laird wasn't aware.
I visited Santa Cruz, I think he's got beach on his mind or something.
He's a member of an organization. We're a part of CFE, California Foundation on the Environment and the Economy, and I presented it that a couple times, and general Yuba Water Agency overview and such. But at any rate, we are making that effort. We're doing everything we can, not only for that $20 million app from the state general fund, but there are other, I'll call them buckets of money for dam safety programs, emergency funds, and we're leaving no stone unturned for outside funds. What we didn't do in Craig's presentation today is get, put rosy colored lenses on and say, oh yeah, here's our structural deficit and we're going to pull $135 million from reserves, but at the same time, we're going to get $500 million in, state funds or emergency funds from the feds or insurance recovery or anything else. All of that stuff will play out over the next couple of years or more, but we're doing everything we can to look at every opportunity, whether it's the current existing grant programs externally for incoming revenues, or just asks with the state general fund and anything else that we think is reasonable and plausible. Adam's been hustling on that, and I'll have Adam give a kind of legislative / budget ask, for lack of better terms, update over the next month or two.
Yeah, because I was thinking about it more and more as, when we have these major events, we have the money to support this recovery. And, I keep saying, but there's going to be another recovery effort we're going to probably want to fund, and you guys are planning on that with selling an energy strip and everything else. But we could have damage at some point, and we need to have that war chest ready. And so I think that's in everybody's interest, state office.
Agreed.
Is that it, Renee?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Charlie.
Nothing to report personally, but I think that the demonstration that both our management and our staff is outstanding for getting us back to where we are today. But going way back, years back, and putting it all together so we are as strong as we are today.
Thank you, Charlie. My only comment, the lunch that we're planning for after next meeting is for hopefully as much of the staff as we can get. It partially coming about because of the cancellation of the employee recognition lunch that was planned back in April or so. And so we're hoping as much as possible of the staff from Marysville and Power Systems can make it. And there will be volunteer opportunities for the board to help serve it. So, and we don't really talk about it before, but I'm ready to volunteer if you're willing. And with that, I think we can adjourn the meeting.
Tuesday on Government Watch, you can support or sponsor. Help keep the community aware with Yuba-Sutter.LIVE. Yuba-Sutter.LIVE. It's the truth that comes through.